This episode of Modern Fireside Chat is brought to you by our patrons at patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv, where people come and throw us a couple bucks a month to support all of our fine shows. Shows like Watch Out for Fireballs or Days of Future Cast or The Level. Any of these shows, if you haven't listened to those, give those a shot. I think if you like this, you'll like those. And I might be wrong. I've been wrong before. However, appreciate you giving it a try, man. And also, if you don't support us on Patreon, a small percentage of listeners do. Please consider it. It's a big deal. It makes a huge difference for us, and it is a way to actively show that you care. Thank you.
Some of our landings were desperate adventures. We are now prepared to meet the inevitable counterattacks with power and with confidence.
My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Kole Ross.
Hey, you're listening to Bonfireside Chat, a tasty morsel.
Yeah. And this week we would be reading your responses to DarkMaus. However, nobody wrote in.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah.
So it's been a while since we batted a no-hitter on that one. Again, thought this game was bigger than it was.
Yeah.
With people, but hopefully we did a service in saying we played 1/3 of it.
Guys, we're gonna own this one.
Yeah. And we went over it, yeah. But we do have every once in a while, responses kind of fall through the cracks, and we take this opportunity to kind of talk about general things, and we're gonna do that. We're kind of do a listener mail roundup.
Yeah. So I'll get us started here with Nicholas, who writes in via contact saying, how about an episode centered on your favorite music from the Soulsborne series? Standout tracks for me include Hail the Nightmare, Ornstein and Smo, and most of Demon Souls. Care to share?
Way back in the day in the Dark Souls 3 season, this was one of the planned special episodes I wanted to do. That game and season ended up being longer than I thought, and it didn't end up working out with the schedule.
Right.
For things. So, which I know sounds weird in retrospect since we've been kind of killing time before the DLC came out, but keep in mind how weird and insecure, it was not knowing when any of that stuff would come out. So at the time, it didn't end up making sense. This was a special I wanted to do though. And I wanted to get Hellkite Drake on, who does covers of songs and rearrangements of these songs and kind of generally works with it, works with the music in the Soulsborne series. And then that never came to be and probably just kind of won't.
Yeah.
Which isn't because it's not an interesting idea. I think that what it is it would be kind of an interview because my answer for this is that I not as much as maybe you would think.
Right. You hit the nail on the head by saying, hey, all of Demon Souls. Just because there are weird and strange instrumentations in that are not just kind of what eventually became the standard boss music of chants and strings.
Yeah. And there are exceptions, and it works in Dark Souls 1.
Yep.
Like so many things because it's the first time. So like when you get on the bridge and the Taurus demon comes out, that music track is forgettable in terms of the series, but really stands out in terms of video game music and stands out in Dark Souls 1.
Yeah.
As the series continued, this got kind of, I feel, blander and blander.
Yeah.
And this is not a popular, that's not, everyone doesn't think that. Like tons of people I know who are really moved by Souls music.
Yeah. And especially I saw a lot of kind of reinvigoration on that around Bloodborne as well.
Yes.
Like
which does have a mildly more interesting instrument palette.
Yes.
To it. So there are a couple of songs that I like Demon Souls does a lot of weird stuff that matches the boss fight really well.
False Idol.
False Idol is fantastic. Main Astrea is probably the best piece of music in that game and is really, really good. In Souls 1, I too like Ornstein and Smo. I've always had a soft spot for Seath.
Yep, Seath.
Like,
with those weird pluck strings behind it. Yeah. Kind of like a little bit of like, hey, this is deranged. Yeah.
Yep.
Love the Crystal Butterfly / Gwendolyn. That is a nice, serene kind of fight or piece that matches those fights in a really cool way.
Pinwheel is awesome. Pinwheel's really good. You don't get to hear all of it because the fight is over too soon, but if you listen to it on YouTube, it's really good.
Yeah.
And then Dark Souls 2, that has my favorite home base theme. Like I think the Majula theme is really good.
Yep.
I've always liked the Ruin Sentinels, which has this weird kind of brass to it. And I've always liked, I think it's still very, very clever, the way that the Royal Aegis, Velstadt, the way that the bell of his weapon works into the soundtrack is awesome.
Yeah.
Love that song.
Good music in the DLC too. I like the music under the Sin fight. And also I really enjoy the fight against the Burned Ivory King. I think is like probably the pinnacle of that kind of instrumentation or approach.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's not something I'm going to listen to on its own, but I think it works really well with that really, really awesome set piece. Bloodborne, like, didn't work on me the same way it worked on everyone kind of around me. I feel like adding strings didn't add as much for me as it did for other people, because the melodies did not feel like it didn't feel like much more melodic. It felt like an added texture to that kind of basic Souls kind of sound bed.
Yeah, that bombast.
Yeah. So it's pretty hard for me to think of like Bloodborne songs that I particularly really like.
Yeah. I love the lullaby. That is, a piece of stunt music, like it is used in the credits, and it's used, at a couple of points as a theme or motif more than anything.
Yeah.
And I think that music ends up working the best, not in beast fights, but in, whenever you're fighting something that is, otherworldly. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Lady Maria fight is good music.
Yeah.
If I recall, I couldn't hum it for you right now though.
No.
And then Dark Souls 3 has, again, also largely fell off my brain.
Yeah.
As far as music goes, like, I'm sure there's stuff in there that if I went back and listened to it, I would dig, but I can't, the sound palette is too narrow.
Yeah.
For me.
Yep. So that's our episode.
Yes.
Or would have been the episode.
Thanks, Nicholas. Yeah. No, I mean, we do appreciate the question. It is an interesting thing that it just kind of, God, like in a weird thesis for the series, like it's an element of the series that wore out.
Yeah.
There's just, I feel like we're out of things to do with that, that music approach.
Yeah. So something I want to make sure that doesn't go unremarked upon is the Firelink theme. I don't know if it's from doing the show. I think it's something that we take for granted as kind of an iconic piece of music that is, I think, even transcended the game. Like that particular piece of music, that swell of strings, like that is a direct line into my spinal cord.
That's very good.
Yeah.
It's actually, and if it's been a while since you've listened to it, scope the this is irregardless of the games, because I sound like a parody of myself being down on Dark Souls 3 and up on Dark Souls 2, but I think Dark Souls 2 has the best credits.
Oh yeah.
Music, like the credits to music to that is really, really good and really pretty.
Yeah.
And the kind of thing I could see listening to outside of, the game.
Yeah.
But this soundtrack never did that for me. Like I never really got into like, I'm just going to listen to a Souls soundtrack the same way that like I have the Shovel Knight soundtrack on vinyl.
Yeah. Yeah. It did different areas, quoting different things.
Yeah. I think it works really well for the game. Even songs that I think are bland when I look back on them actually like match the fight usually pretty well.
Yeah.
Josh says by contact. Thank you, Nicholas. Josh says by contact. I'm about 2 years behind, but in Dark Souls, there is one boss fog in which you can turn around and exit after starting. Right after entering the fog gate, into the first encounter with Seath in the archives, you have 3 to 4 seconds to decide if you want to stay in the room. Also, my first playthrough of Demon Souls, the Tower Knight stopped me in my tracks. He made me quit until I convinced a friend to pick up the game. I don't know if it's just me or what, but I reread the back of the Demon Souls box recently, and it made it sound like the worst adventure game of the 90s.
Deep beneath the sorry, this font is crazy. Deep beneath the Nexus, the old one has awakened. A mighty demon horde pours into Boletaria, devouring the souls of men. Called upon by the Maiden in Black, you go forth to lift the curse. Leave hints, view the deaths of past players, work cooperatively, or invade another's game. Watch the world around you shift according to the actions of you and your fellow players on the PlayStation Registered Trademark Network. Different enemies, items, and events may trigger, leading to different consequences. So they did explain the tendency system, just not in the game.
It's I think that actually sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
as opposed to now where it just be like, are you prepared for the challenge of a lifetime? Yeah. You will die again and again and again. The
legend never dies. Yeah.
The legend never dies. The bit about the boss fog, for a second I was like, right when entering the fog with the first encounter in Seath, if you can leave, it's because of that's a mandatory death. Like that's the only thing that's different about that boss.
Yeah.
I never tried that because the first time I got caught by it, the second the trick, and the second time I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna run in there and die.
Yeah. Just get it over with.
I know what to do, but it's hard. I wanted to call it an ease of use consideration, but it's not because you can never. There's nothing to signal it.
Right. Yeah.
And the only reason to do that would be to go spend your souls or whatever, or go put on a ring or something like that.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. I did not know that. That
was pursuant to a conversation we had several episodes ago, actually, talking about the occurrence of soul doors you can go back through, or fog doors you can go back through. I forget exactly what the circumstances were. That is not just out of nowhere.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah, that's what's happening with this miscellaneous brag bag.
Let's see here. Fred writes via contact saying, so maybe someone has mentioned this by now, but I've been listening to your Bonfireside Chat back catalog and I wanted to weigh in on something. During Demon Souls, you guys frequently mentioned that there was no way to tell the various areas' locations relative to each other. I only realized this during my playthrough inspired by the podcast, but the world and character tendency screen is set on what appears to be a map. If you take the character tendency statue as being the location of the Nexus, it looks like the Archstones may be where they are as a part of the Old One's seal. If you look, the character tendency statue even looks like it's on a coast, which fits with the beach that you see the Old One on at the end of the game. What do you guys think about this idea?
I just pulled it up to look at it. I never noticed it before, and I think maybe. It also looks like a map that is purposely stained, or like a piece of paper. Like it looks a little bit like when you're playing D&D and you want to make something look old, and like you put coffee on it and put it in the oven.
Yeah, soak it in tea.
Yeah, it looks a little bit like that as well. There aren't I'm looking for like map hallmarks other than just wavy lines that could be coastlines.
Yeah, I don't know. It does lay it out, but however, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, they're just labeled clockwise. Starting at 7 o'clock.
Yeah, so that would put the mine on an island.
Yeah.
There. Yeah, I don't know. I could see it. When there's also that big, there's the broken archstone there, which makes it look a little bit more like a map because it looks like a mountain or something. I don't know. It could be. I could also see it just being a texture.
Yeah.
It's kind of similar to the texture that's in the backdrop of the character portrait kind of things. That abstract thing that when it just shows you're the Silent Chief and there's so maybe. But I don't know because it's so strongly. This puts kind of no matter which way you read it. The mines on a different island or continent from Boletaria. And those are the two areas we have a direct relationship with. It's like, these are the mines where they mine everything for them. So I guess that could be on an island and stuff, but it just feels a little bit more stretchy. But yeah, maybe. Yeah. It does kind of look like that.
It's something about my thing I never noticed. Go ahead.
Something about my shitty TV, and part of the reason why Tendency was so hard for me to see when I did this is like it was weirdly oversaturated.
Oh yeah.
I'm getting rid of that TV. I'm really happy to. It is old, but it was like always weirdly oversaturated. So I don't know if I ever really saw that before.
Yeah.
Actually, so it's interesting.
Yeah, if I saw it, I never noticed it. I didn't spend a lot of time on that screen.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. What does Russ say?
Russ says via contact. I'm writing in because of your call for players that started out their Dark Souls adventure with Dark Souls 3. That's me. First of all, the gameplay is really what drew me into the series, and I find it to be excellent. I agree that some areas are overly short and possibly unfinished. From a lore standpoint, I take the game as more abstract art than coherent literature. A lot of the game dialogue is more interesting to me if I take it as direct communication with me, the player, instead of my game character. What if the intention is to break the fourth wall? I, as a player, took on the goal of linking the fire, even though there can be no tangible reward. The Firekeeper is indifferent to me completing the task because now that I own the game, it's up to me to do what I want with it. Does that reframe any of your thoughts on the messages in the game?
Yeah. The character is such a cipher that I kind of don't draw that distinction between it talking to the character and talking to me.
Yeah, I think this that specific second bit is in regards to because the Firekeeper in the main Firekeeper in Dark Souls 3 does give a shit about you.
Yeah.
But when you what's her head? Not Rhea. New Rhea. Henri. No. The lady who becomes a Firekeeper.
Irina.
Yeah. Irina. When she becomes very indifferent to you, and maybe that's what this is us talking about. That's what that specifically is in relation to. Mm-hmm. I've read reads about Dark Souls 3 where the whole thing is kind of meta about the series itself. Mm-hmm. I don't think individual bits of dialogue and stuff are addressing the player, though.
No.
The Souls series has done that, but I feel like it's more obvious when that happens. Mm-hmm. It's like the crones in the beginning of Dark Souls 2.
Yeah.
Like you will die again and again and lose your souls. Like I think that's probably that's a wink.
Yeah.
These things don't feel they just don't feel that to me in the tone. Like it doesn't feel like a wink given how kind of serious the game is when it's not being explicitly Seagrow, but like when it's most of the actual story stuff is very, very heavy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think I see it. So not that it's a bad interpretation, but I don't think I see it.
Yeah. The meta thing has popped up and I haven't connected those dots. Is my take on it. Yeah. I would much rather the thing have a coherent internal logic before it connects to something else.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong. When you talk about looking at it abstractly, like that's how a lot of the Bloodborne stuff worked for me, where I'm like, I'm going to take this on a theme level and not worry, about the Thumerians as much,
right?
And that made Bloodborne more enjoyable for me. Dark Souls 3 has the burden of being, part of a 3-game series where the previous games in the series didn't require that kind of abstraction, so to suddenly introduce it feels grosser.
Yeah.
And there's also, I think there's nothing wrong with like looking at something like it's a text,
right?
Like you can, and I talked to a lot of people who, specifically people who end up enjoying the DLC a lot more than me, who are saying like, I like the themes. I like the kind of, the tone of it. And it's like, I like that stuff too. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean that you can't look at it like a text. Like it doesn't mean that it doesn't need to, there are characters that have been introduced and concepts that have been introduced that like, you don't have to solve it like an equation. It doesn't have to make perfect sense, but it has to make, thematic sense. There have to be conclusions that come from it. Mm-hmm. It's still operating in terms of story.
Yeah.
And still has to succeed in those terms as well.
Yeah. There has to be movement. There has to be some kind of arc or drawing together as opposed to this agglomeration of details folding in on itself,
And, and it's one of the things that a big thing that makes me think about it is that like the DLC, reveals something that could be interpreted as the angels, right? Mm-hmm. The angels are a huge part of Dark Souls 3 that's not really explained very well. Mm-hmm. So it's the thing I've been saying for a whole season where it's like there are connections, but like this is the angel, like this caused the Lothric Civil War. Yeah. This thing from which like there's no additional information of it, and this is what it is in the world. This is what visited Gertrude and cause that schism. Are you out of your fucking mind? Like it's a connection, and it's like you could say like, oh, I just kind of like theme wise, I like how that looks. I like how they look. I like the tone, but it's still operating as a story. Like a civil war happened. Mm-hmm. Like those things, like the story stuff drives that theme stuff.
Yeah.
If you have to just look at it on its own, I think the work on it on a whole is a little bit weaker. If you can't tie in any of the actual mechanics, characters, plot, those things that are traditional elements of like narrative.
Yeah. There's something unsatisfying about a response to a critique of the story saying, you're not squinting hard enough.
Yeah. Like you need more Vaseline over the lens, To me, that's a personal thing, right? Yeah. Like if you want to slather your eyeballs in Vaseline and it makes you like something, which like totally happens. Like every especially with this DLC, man, like I mean we're deep in it, so that's why it's coming up a lot, but like the people who I have seen who have been defending the DLC are like they're buying stock in Vaseline.
Yeah.
Where it's just like they're treating the game like if I say something bad about it, I'm going to hurt its feelings, and I can't do that. It's like this is my father-in-law. Like I'm getting married to Dark Souls 3, the Ring City's daughter, and I can't say anything bad about it. So I just have to be like, oh, I love the outfits, and I love the lighting.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm very happy the Desert Pyromancer set came back, but
yeah, but it's those things are so superficial.
Yeah.
You know, and if you putting that much Vaseline on your eyes makes you enjoy it more, I wouldn't take that away from you, but it has no place in the realm of criticism or like looking at it as a game.
Yeah.
You know, it has no bearing on it as a serious discussion about it as a product, you know, like that sounds mean, but I just don't think that works.
Yeah. It's not appropriate for us in the choices that we have made in approaching this. Yeah.
At the very least, it has nothing to do with how I want to approach not just Souls, but any art.
Right.
You know, I don't want to uncritically like something because it's pretty ever. And, you know, so it's fine if that's for you, but it doesn't answer anything that we're saying. Like, it's like we're in different pools.
Yep.
And I'm not saying there's a better pool. It's just a different pool,
Yep.
you know, because you had more fun with it than I did. And you're probably winning.
I'm envious.
It's a nicer
of that.
pool.
Yeah.
It's a nicer pool.
Yeah.
It's a more fun pool to be in, but it's not the pool that I was born in.
Yeah. Our pool has what is possibly a Baby Ruth in it. We are investigating and trying to see if that is the case.
It is the pool I was born in and has never been cleaned since.
Oh, no, Gary, no.
So it's a lot like the beginning of Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah.
Like it's that kind of beach, you know? And
you know the end of Bloodborne, that.
Yeah, Bloodborne. I was Bloodborne into this thing. Yeah, I recognize that was really gross when I said it. And I like almost backed up, and then I was like,
but you had to get that sweet Gary no.
Yeah. Just, I'm thirsty for it, boy. Pinkies.
Art writes in via context saying, after a long time away, 3 generations.
There's a lot of O's in that long. Can you retake that with more O's?
After a long time away, three generations of consoles worth from video games, a combination of the apocalyptic contemporary political climate and the acquisition of a job that allows me to afford such things, I have recently returned. First with Bloodborne, which I got how should I do this?
That's about a third as long as the last one.
Okay. First with Bloodborne, which I got way more sucked into than I anticipated, and eventually beat. And then still had my save file corrupted almost immediately after starting New Game Plus. Blah. Still energized, but a bit miffed by the setback. I did start a new playthrough and made it back about halfway so far. I journeyed into Dark Souls 3. After getting my bum handed to me over and over for about a month because I really wanted to play it like Bloodborne, I eventually pushed forward, got a bit of a hang for it, and beat the Abyss Watchers last night. I'm really intrigued by the lack of hand-holding and the ambiance of the environment and the lore of these games. And then let's see here, paragraphs and paragraphs plus YouTube videos of the gushy things people say about the Soulsborne games. I think you just included that as a thing there, like an aside. It's an asterisk. I think that is roleplay speak. Yeah, there we go. Let's see here, picking back up. And as such, because Art is so enamored of it, and since I am stuck at my computer 5 days out of the week, I've been going through your podcast, which I am quite enjoying. However, just now I was listening to episode 92, The Undead Settlement, and the unexpected and sudden encounter with a reference to the Indiana beach theme and mascot is on par with any moment I've had in these games. Thank you for that. That is there's more than corn in Indiana.
There's more than, yep.
It's worth noting that I also run a D&D second edition campaign, and I've been enjoying your Monster in My podcast as well. That's about all for now. I was just jarred out of my autopilot by that reference, and I was compelled all the way to write you fellas.
There is indeed more than corn in Indiana. Confirmed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Running a second edition D&D campaign.
Yeah.
Like, wow. In a way, like if you're into that rule set, this is an awesome time for that, because not only is second edition by far when I go thrifting or wherever I'm out at used bookstores, like the materials thing I find the most, but also Wizards, now that they've acquired that stuff, has made like pretty much all of that stuff available in like pretty good PDF form.
Oh, good.
Like you can get, if you can do an RPG PDF book, like you can get all of second edition for like decent price.
Yeah.
Not to mention like the fight, if you want to find if it fell off the truck, like there are tons of torrents of that stuff too. So like second edition would be really easy to run comprehensively right now.
Yeah.
Weirdly, fourth edition is not. Like we switched over to fourth edition to finish off our kind of aborted Torchbearer campaign, and like fourth edition stuff is hard to find.
Yeah, they're like pushing that thing under the rug.
Forgetting they did it. Yeah. But second edition, like that would really work, and that's a cool. Like I have a lot of affection for second edition, obviously. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. This is another person who came into the series kind of late. That jump from Bloodborne, even for somebody who is familiar with Dark Souls, going from Bloodborne to Souls is pretty difficult. At least I found it to be so. But yeah. I'm glad you're enjoying it, and if you continue to work backwards, like that will serve you well. Yeah. This will ease you back. I think so. Hopefully you dig it. And I was just thinking about like that when he talks about the YouTubes of it. Kind of feeling some affection and nostalgia for that period where I was like, man, anything, I need anything Souls, like put it in my veins. Yeah. Yeah.
Like before we did the show, and then eventually like that kind of faded where like there are a couple of YouTube stars I still really like, but I've really dialed back on that. And it's just, but that was such a serious, like, not addiction, like addiction's not funny, but like a real serious, like mania.
Yeah. A real enthusiasm. And a real curiosity. Yeah. Like
intense curiosity. And it's like unlike I found, had for almost anything else. I'm envious of being in that position,
Yeah.
That's a really fun place to be in because you have years of stuff about it. Like you have, you can go back through all these games, and by the time you get to like, the entire series will be an encapsulated thing that is entirely crystallized on the internet between our podcast and between YouTubes and between wikis and stuff. Like you'll be able to find out everything about these games.
Yeah. And as you're going backward, it gets more and more worthwhile to look at these things.
I think so too. Like I think they get better. I mean, and Bloodborne's great, actually. Like Bloodborne's really, really good, but you already did that.
Yeah.
And you could also disagree. Like there are people who like Dark Souls 3 the best of all.
Yep. No, but thank you for, I generally don't put in stuff that's like, hey, that was funny or complimenting us, but I completely forgot that we dropped that reference to that commercial. Yeah. And
and second edition D&D, man.
Yeah.
Birthright campaign, arms and equipment guide, wizard kits. I'm actually getting rid of all my, like I did a big purge of like RPG books and comics and stuff since I'm moving in a couple months, and got rid of like I was like, you know what, I don't really need these, like the complete guide to elves, the complete guide to wizards, all these things that I've picked up. I decided to get rid of them, and it was kind of sad.
Yeah,
like flip through them, and it was fun for one last time, but I just need the space.
Yeah.
So,
shame.
Jonah says via contact, I just finished listening to all of your Dark Souls episodes. Unfortunately, I don't have access to the console games of the Soulsborne series, so that might be a major factor in my opinion. Listening to the latest Dark Souls 3 episodes really bummed me out. The fact that this game series you guys love had failed you in the end made me very sad. I felt extra bummed out because the third entry is my favorite in the series regarding gameplay mechanics. Dark Souls 3 has my favorite weapons, covenants, bosses, and enemies in the whole series. I especially enjoyed the fact that Dark Souls 3 required me to vary my playstyle much more than the previous games during my playthrough, and the difficulty never felt too punishing for me. I wasn't all that into the lore until I started listening to your podcast a few months ago, but I always thought that Dark Souls 3 was clearly the weakest in that regard. Let's hope that they don't fuck up the Let's hope that they don't fuck up the last DLC. Surely this time Krusty is coming, right, guys? I love what you guys do and respect you as people. Thanks, Jonas. I respect you as a person too.
Yeah.
We could, this would be a good thing for like our eventual, whenever the podcast ends, but it's probably worth talking about that because a couple of people have been like, I'm real sad for you guys. And like, I don't feel that sad.
No.
Like I liked doing this show. I like Dark Souls 3. Like at times it sounded like I didn't. But I liked it. I had fun playing through it. I think it is a really good game. I think that the fact that we do take this kind of lore approach is what made that shine worse for us. So even though I think, like, for me, and it is unquestionably the worst entry in the series, it is lots of things to recommend it. It's still like good in your hands and stuff in a way that like I don't want to trade for anything. It's just the fact that the story let me down.
Yeah.
So hard is the biggest kind of kick in the dick, but I'm fine because time, all those other games still exist for me. Like I still have those things.
And I'm very excited to go back through them, to revisit them. And in the light of this DLC specifically, I agree with you. Things that Jonah says about Dark Souls 3's kind of mechanics and, build variety, their neat bosses, it gets cut by the wrong side of the curve,
Yeah.
Like, and that is, on one hand, it's a problem of expectations, but those are also expectations that that they set, And nobody should feel sad about a thing that we choose to do. And also
Totally.
Don't ascribe more hyperbole onto what we say than what we put out, you know?
Yeah. It's one of those things where if the Dark Souls guys didn't like this as much, it's going to seem like we hate it, and we don't.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I hate the lore stuff. I think the story stuff is incomprehensible and doesn't add up to very much. But like, I was just thinking about it today, reflecting on the DLC. All the things I'm saying are base game. I think both DLCs are trash. Yeah, but thinking back on the base game, and I was like, you know what was fun? Aerithil Dungeon.
Yeah.
Like I had fun just going through that area. Like the traps were cool. The jailers I think are a little bit annoying, but it was still at least like an interesting, felt kind of, good and interesting. And, I was just like, oh, that's a fun level to go through. And I was just thinking back, I was like, oh, those are fun levels. Like the level design's really good and it's fun to move through those places. Like it is a good game in that respect. It's just because of our approach, being this kind of melange of like, mechanics and lore, when one section falls down, everything kind of gets propped down.
Yeah.
And the weird thing is like the DLCs could not have reflected on the base game.
No.
Mechanically rather. So like, it's not like when we were saying Krusty was going to get here, it wasn't like, cause there are, that build variety thing I think actually is, and as the DLCs go, like is not as good as it initially seems, and you do have to do a lot of things during it, but really it's just like, a strength build or a strength of maybe a splash of magic is what you want. Kind of period. I went through the DLC with my dex weapon and I'm like doing 100 damage to the bosses, and it is ridiculous, and it's absolutely maxed out in every possible way, and it's a good dex weapon. It just doesn't matter because a game without poise means a dex weapon, I can't stun them, and I have no way to get iframes so during attack. So it just kind of works. So there are problems with it mechanically, but the DLC wasn't going to fix that.
No.
The DLC could have fixed the lore stuff. And that's where that kind of disappointment or that sad, desperate hope that we had for it came from.
Yeah.
So that probably made us seem sadder than we were.
Yeah.
And then Krusty didn't get here.
Nope.
I think remotely. Like the DLC does a really good. The second DLC does a great job of wrapping up the first DLC. And I'm not kidding. Like it does. Like so those two things together make a complete story that I don't think necessarily needed to be told, but at least is fine and thematically resonant enough.
Yeah.
It does nothing to reflect on Dark Souls 3 itself or Dark Souls on a whole in a way that I think is meaningful.
Right.
At least in my researches so far. Like I didn't find every item. Not every item description has shown up online yet. I've been reading, as things come up, but where I'm at right now, that's kind of where I've landed on it.
Yeah. I haven't beaten it yet. I am pretty dissatisfied with where I'm at right now. When it comes to it, I feel like I'm sinking a lot of time. I think I have broader, almost like philosophical or political concerns about the relationship between these games and difficulty. And, I'm feeling pretty alienated by some of the design priorities that they're putting forward. I don't feel, we talked about it before, as the Dark Souls 3 season kind of drew to a close, just like it feels like it's, we're drifting apart. This is kind of confirming that there are, if not the seeds, at least the roots and maybe a stalk of irreconcilable differences happening right now. And I think that is, it's tough to pin it on any one game because that is something that has been starting. It started a long time ago. It's been a factor. Like
again, but the defiled watchdog lifted his leg and fertilized the terrible seed.
Yeah. It's hard to know where the line is drawn or where that gradient kind of began. All I know is right now where I'm at with the experience that I'm having, we're well past the line, or I'm well past the line for things that I feel like are good experiences or designed to, be respectful of my approach.
Yeah. I was thinking about, I was stuck on the second boss of the DLC for longer than I wanted it to be. And I hate that boss. I'm looking forward to talking about why I hate it. And I was like, what do we do with the show if I can't do this?
Yeah.
Like literally what happens if I just can't do this, because it's not, and this is all stuff I've gone over 1,000 times. Like I don't need to say like I'm not bad at video games. Like it's not that the will is not willing. It's just like it's just kind of hatefully designed, and that kind of continues throughout. So when you talk about those irreconcilable differences, I feel like they're like to the core at this point. There are seeds of it in the previous in Bloodborne to a lesser extent, and then in Dark Souls 3 it's a slightly greater extent, but have just kind of really blossomed. Like they're like. When you see this stuff in their social media and things like that, like it is such I don't know who this is for anymore.
No.
And there are people, like people who are just like, man, I love it. Like it's great. Like hurt me more. And it's just an unlimited, it's like a toggle, and I have a degree of hurt me more.
Yeah. I mean,
like if it's a slider, like I'm like an 80% hurt me more guy, man. Yeah. Like I like these fucking tough games, dude. Like I'm way into, I do like custom challenges for like, I was like, oh, I'm going to do Deus Ex and I'm not going to hurt anybody. That's fucking hard. That's a hard challenge to do.
Yeah.
I love doing stuff like that. I love making those little rules for me, but my hurt me more slider is not at 100.
No. Mine rests right about Orphan of Kos.
Like that's a really, really hard boss fight. And that's about as hard as it can get and still feel good.
Yeah.
Because at a certain point, and we talked about this with Salt and I talked about it with Nameless King and stuff, like I just feel lucky.
Yeah.
And I feel nothing. I feel the relief. Like I just described it on Slack. Like I feel a relief that comes with never having to do it again. But it's like if I hired somebody to clean my basement. Like I never have to do that again, but it's not like cleaning the basement is fun.
Right.
And it's not like hiring the person was fun. It's just here's a thing I don't like doing. I don't have to do anymore.
Right.
It's very hard to have fun. And there's a gene, like there's people who are just like, if I can get through it, it is awesome. And I just don't have that,
No.
And this is all, if you go back to the Chalice Dungeons episode 2, like there's like a half hour on this about the Defiled Watchdog, but like it really is for me if me getting through it has no bearing on whether I think it's good.
No. Being happy that it's done is not a value that I have. Something that would be valuable is if I'm in the middle of it thinking I want to do this again. Like, if I had a different builder, if I approached this a different way or something like that. Like again,
And that used to happen.
Yeah.
Like that, like in a pre-Nameless King, pre-Elfrida world, like that would happen.
Yeah.
Like I was just like, oh man, like this would be really cool to tackle some other way in a game that has kind of more of that variety, or just for the pure pleasure of it. Like again, and I parody myself, but it's one of the things I love about bonfire aesthetics in Dark Souls 2 is that like you could do that.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I want to play this. I want to play it 10% harder. But it's like I really like it. I want to do it again. The game allows you to do that because some of those bosses I would want to play again.
Yeah.
I fought like Sir Alam like 3 times.
Yeah.
Like because it was really great. That was a really super fun fight. Like that is it's flow. It's the kind of the place between challenging and frustrating is like is a state that you can get into.
High effort, high difficulty. Yeah.
Yes. And that's what you want. And these are just blasting that out of the water.
Yeah.
And turning into instead like a badge, and I'm not like an internet tough guy. Like I just don't feel like dick measuring contest. I don't feel, I've never felt like smarter or better or good for doing something hard in a game.
No.
I was just earlier I was saying like, oh, I beat Deus Ex without killing anybody. Like it doesn't, and you can't quite do that, but you know what I mean? I don't feel like that is like a badge. I'm never going to brag about that. It's not that kind of thing. And I think that this is maybe made for people to be like, yeah, I did it, and feel a little good about themselves in a way that transcends video games.
Yeah.
And that I will never have that.
Yeah.
That's just not me.
Instead, what I get is I can't beat this boss, so I feel like a piece of shit and a fraud.
Or at the very least, you're just like, I'm an hour older and more tense and less happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's meaningful,
It's something.
It's something, and it's just, one thing that I think about too, in kind of the grander point about feeling bad that the last game kind of ended up being a bummer is that like, I'm glad that it changed. Because if it just been something like where like, and people will make this argument and tell me how I actually feel, which will be frustrating, but it happens where they'll be like, no, you're just burnt out. And that could have happened if they just kind of released Dark Souls 2 quality games forever, like they're like, Dark Souls 5 and it's as good as Dark Souls 2. I would have gotten fatigued and eventually just been done with it.
Yeah.
There's a satisfaction, at least in the fact that like, no, the thing is definitely trying for something different. Now, and I think it'd be disingenuous to say that like the Ringed City does not have different values than Artorias of the Abyss,
right?
Or something like that. And it is, I feel better saying like, oh, these values just don't line up with mine. Irreconcilable differences is better than you'll never get the kids, go to hell, I never want to see you again.
Yeah.
that's a good reason to divorce. That's why I got divorced. Like, it's a good reason to get divorced, guys. It's just like, I'm just not in love with you anymore. Yeah. It's not hateful. It's just, I don't love you anymore.
Yeah.
And it's trying to do a thing, and I want something different, and it's fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if any budding divorcees out there are listening,
do it. It's fun. No, I can't imagine. That sounds.
I mean, it's not great, but there's a right way to do it. You know, there's not a right way, but there's a better way to do it than the hateful, teary-eyed,
acrimonious
screaming matches.
Yeah.
And this is Dark Souls is not, and my relationship with Souls, assuming this is the last game in the series, actually, is not ending with like a screaming, tearing thing. It's just kind of like, man, you are going for something that I do not get.
Yep.
What are you? Who are you for now?
Have fun over there.
It's just, that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
We're not sad. Divorce metaphor.
Yeah. That's my divorce was a really good thing to happen to me. Like, in the end, it was like very positive,
Yeah.
I would be sadder now if it never happened than I am now.
Right.
So, it's divorce is only like always sad for kids.
Yeah.
That's something you learn when you get older. Where it's like, oh, divorce is really sad, but it's because I've been watching it through a lens of like
Kramer
TV
versus
specials.
Kramer.
Yeah. Where it's about the children, and like, luckily, I never got one past the goalie, so like, it's I'm doing all right in that respect. My genetic line ends now.
You took John Darnielle's advice.
Yeah, exactly. At least no children. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to read the responses. Something a writer, I don't want to dogpile this person, so I'm not going to say it, but a piece went up today from a games writer who I generally really like that was talking about that boss fight, that second boss fight that I hate so much, and said it was the strongest boss fight in the series, and was kind of going on the stuff. And it did the game journalism thing that like Final Fantasy 15 syndrome, where you just kind of say a bunch of superlatives but don't say why.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's really special, guys. It's really good, but you can't actually articulate why, and that always makes me really suspicious. It's like, oh, there's going to be a backlash to this, and then eventually people are not going to think this.
Yeah.
This is just you liking something, and you need to do a better job of articulating it. And the thing it was like, I was, okay, if this is not the defense of the DLC and this boss fight specifically, can I imagine one? And I can. Like, there's somebody out there who just like loves this. Like, this is, I take some solace in the fact that this is for somebody. Like, oh, this is a thing. They're going for something. It is, this has values that somebody could pick up.
Yeah.
So, and I can imagine that review of somebody who like picked that up. It's like, I have these values. Hey, this thing applies to my values. Great. I think it's rarer. I think it's becoming more niche.
Yeah.
I think that like in the response from Twitter and Slack and Facebook, most people are pretty cranky about it.
Yeah.
I'm saying, and that's not, I don't think that people who listen to the show necessarily, I mean, I know people who listen to the show don't necessarily agree with us. I don't think that like, that's a biased audience.
Right. Yeah. Who knows? There's a possibility that this is the furthest edge.
Yeah. And if it wasn't like, I feel like they're trapped in some kind of thing too, because if they did like, Bloodborne 2 would start at this level.
Yep.
Like they would have to, like, I think they don't know how to pull back, because people would complain about it. The people for whom this is for would be like, man, I can't believe the first boss in Bloodborne 2 was such a pushover. So I'm sympathetic. Like, they can't win.
Right.
It just kind of sucks all around.
Yeah. I don't know.
I too don't know.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Without
going into specifics, there'll be a time to talk about the Ring City.
Yeah,
I just have to go farm some souls.
I'm like legitimately looking forward to talking about it, because it is. I think it is like twice as interesting as Ashes of Ariandel, even though it is hateful and cruel. Like, it's, at least it is going for something. Whereas I have no idea who Ashes is for. Like,
Ring City right now. I hope that I can look back on it and laugh.
Yeah, exactly. I had to describe it like a, and like a public dancing,
Yeah, just describe it like having a kidney stone.
Yeah, like I pissed my pants while giving a speech.
Yeah.
So anyway, thanks everybody for writing in. Not specifically about DarkMaus, but just kind of in general. We do really appreciate it. If you have anything to say about a host of games, we would like to write in. What are those games, Cole?
Those games
I clearly can't be trusted.
So I don't have the calendar up right now, so I don't know the order. But just as soon as possible, if you have thoughts about The Ringed City, about Let It Die, about Neo, or about Hollow Knight, then go to Duckfeed.tv/contact and send those to us. Remember the usual kind of guidelines for getting something on the show. Make it succinct, novel, and clear. All of that is very much appreciated. And
1 entry per game.
Yes, please. Yeah. So if you have thoughts about all 4 of those, thank you. We really appreciate it. But please send those as different messages as opposed to one long piece, because I cannot manage that.
Yeah, it just helps us out a whole lot.
It does.
Ratings and reviews on iTunes are very, very helpful. Also, I guess backing up just a little bit, to your piece, if your response doesn't get read, this episode should be evidence. Like, it might get at some point. We save these up for a rainy day, and we read them all, regardless of whether we read them all on air. So we appreciate it no matter what.
Yeah.
So don't get discouraged if you send something in and it doesn't get read.
Yeah.
Ratings and reviews on iTunes are very helpful.
Yep.
And probably the most helpful thing you can do if you listen to the show is check us out on Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv, you can throw us a couple bucks a month. You get access to episodes a day early, our Slack channel, which is a really good place to discuss this, and whenever there's a really hard Souls thing, a really good resource for summon buddies.
Yeah, everybody.
It's like Tinder for Sun Bros. Like everybody's hooking up there.
Yeah, I was ripping my hair out last night, and people were like, "Hey, I'll come help you." I'm like, "Nope, I've already lost patience."
Yeah. But there are people there who want to help you.
Yes.
So you can hang out there. You also get a lot of cool other things that go along with our Patreon, depending on what tier you support us at. So go check that out and see if any of that stuff seems appealing to you and is within your budget. It is immeasurably helpful to us.
Yes, it is. I think that's everything.
Yeah. Thank you guys very much for listening, and we'll be back with a special episode next week. And then after that, Let It Die.
Yeah.
Umbasa.
Or after that, no, Ring City.
Fuck me.
And we all pray that we will have far more soon